Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Tire Rack. Thank you, Rock Auto. And thank you, Alec Webb. And welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek podcast number 146. Around our unusual shaped table at MotorWeek Central in Studio C, we have writer-producer Brian Robinson.
Also unusually shaped.
Never gets old.
Our online content coordinator, Patrick Lucas.
Hello, John.
Our assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
Hey.
And on the telephone, live from Florida, FYI reporter Lauren Morrison.
I promise I'm not on the beach.
Or wearing flip-flops. We have a lightning round, a viewer question, our rant and rave section later. But first, okay. We're at another milestone with the series. We have show 3601. Our new season is starting.
Wow,
this is our 36th season on the air. Wow. What is everybody around the table, and Lauren, chime in, what do you think are, over the next 12 months, what do you think are going to be the hot topics? Is there any trend in vehicles that is going to pick up? What do you think people should expect from a new season besides watching me lose more hair and get older?
No.
I'm hoping by the end of the season that cars will just be driving themselves.
1 year?
Yeah, we won't have to participate at all. We'll pretty much just let them do their thing, take some notes, and run it through a formula and put out the road test.
Won't that be exciting?
Yeah, it's going to be great.
We'll just
I hope you're wrong.
send the car out for testing and
Maybe
let the car do
teleportation.
itself?
yeah.
All
That'd be great.
right.
This is the year for teleportation. I think people will finally figure it out.
Cars
no
are
longer
done, yeah.
necessary, and we are, out of a job. But at least I don't need to pay for a car.
That'll be what happens is, like, by the time they got the canals built, railroads were done, and they were useless. So by the time they get autonomous driving figured out, we'll be teleporting, and they'll be like, oh, we wasted all this money on autonomous driving.
That's funny.
I don't see any reason to bring this back into reality. Patrick, you're just sitting there laughing.
I can't go any more extreme than that. If I have to bring it back down to reality, I do think autonomous and semi-autonomous systems are going to get, if not a lot more competent, then a lot more prevalent. I think we're going to start seeing them pop up in cars and brands that we didn't expect to.
What do you think about this new trend? Not so much new, it's been around forever. The autocycles, the three-wheelers, that now they're trying to get all the rules changed so that they classify as cars. These are vehicles that have two wheels in front, one in back, one or two people, have a steering wheel rather than handlebars. Many states, like our home state, Maryland, require a motorcycle license, but they're trying to get them changed to get where a regular driver's license would be sufficient. We've tested a couple of them. Do you think that's a trend, or is that just a hiccup in the market?
I wouldn't call it a trend by any means. They're always going to be there, but they're always going to be a super small portion of the market. I don't really see it being a trend. I think, I was doing some research on that. You mentioned the topic. Most states do classify them as motorcycles, but since Polaris came out with a Slingshot, which is really just a three-wheel car, they've been going above and beyond trying to get governments to change regulations to get so you don't need a motorcycle license or wear a helmet. And most states are going with that. You mentioned Maryland is getting ready to announce that that's the case. But I think they need to be careful what they're wishing for, because motorcycles don't require any crash testing, obviously, whereas cars do.
Yeah.
So, if you want these things classified as cars, you're going to have to start doing a lot more testing.
Can you imagine something like a Slingshot with energy-absorbing bumpers and front ends and all that stuff on it?
They're not going to be
increase
the same
the weight exponentially. Lauren, anything that you think from your looking at the vast consumer landscape that's going to catch their eye this year? I
think like everybody said, autonomous vehicles. We've been trying to work on an FYI piece for a while now, and I think the technology has been slowly being put out there. Manufacturers have still been pretty reluctant to let us get in, a car. But I think in the next year, I'm going to get in an autonomous car on a proving ground somewhere, and that's what I'm really hoping for. And I think by this time next year, we'll we'll definitely be a lot further in the autonomous game. That's my prediction.
It's worth noting, that Google has stayed out of this controversy because their idea is a fully autonomous car, even without a steering wheel, and they've not wanted to let anybody really do anything in one, certainly not customers, until they have it completely figured out, where everybody else is sort of rushing. Electric cars. By this time next year, we'll have driven the heck out of a Chevy Volt, and the Tesla cheap car will be right on the horizon. There'll be a new Leaf that'll probably have a 200-mile range like the Bolt. The 200-mile electric car, affordable, whatever you want that to mean, let's say under $50,000. Do you think that's going to finally make electric cars something that the average person might be interested in?
If gas were still $4 a gallon, yeah, but with currently like $1.95 here in our town, I don't see it. People rushing out to buy them.
Yeah. I think they'll be more popular. Certainly, if you can keep driving the price down, more and more people who are sort of, environmentally conscious, but don't want to commit to buying a car that gets them 100 miles max on a charge, or they want to spend $70,000 and get a car that you can drive 300 miles, but you don't have that money. I think if you can drive it down and offer a good range, I think a lot more people would be, on board. They'd be like, do something good for the environment. Plus, it's kind of cheap and it's easy to fill up and charge, and it gets me where I need to go.
We always try and start our first show of the season with something that's ultra exciting. And this year we've come up with something that's a little different. We're no stranger to car comparisons, but this is not your typical car comparison. We have access to a legendary Porsche 959, and we came up with the idea of just how far has Porsche come with their, shall we say, normal vehicles since the 959, and Porsche loaned us a 911 Turbo S to kind of drive side by side, not so much a comparison. And that's going to be on the first show, and that looks pretty exciting to me. Now, two of the members at this table were probably close to being in diapers when maybe three including Lauren, when the 959 came out. But what do you think of the current Porsche versus your limited exposure to the 959, at least what it's supposed to be? Brian, let me start with you. You've got the most experience.
Well, I had limited exposure in both. I didn't really get much time in the Turbo S, but it's kind of anticlimactic since all Porsche 911s are turbos now. So I'm not sure that the turbo is what it always has been, but
not as vaulted as it always was.
Correct, but like I said, I didn't really get a chance to drive it. I don't know, all the numbers are there. It looks legit. You probably know more than me, Greg.
Yeah. As far as driving goes, I didn't get a ton of time actually driving the 959. As you can imagine, it's not something you want to be driving
it's a museum
around
piece.
A ton. Yeah. But I think one of the cool things that I noticed just looking at the two cars side by side is the cues that were taken that have survived the almost 30 years since the 959 came out. You're like, oh, look at that. That's almost exactly the same the way that venting is. Or look at this and look at that. So we've got some really cool shots of both cars side by side. That's just really cool to watch the evolution of how some things have changed, some things have stayed the same. But it's just amazing the technology that was in that 959 in '87. It's
and now it's kind of like ordinary.
Yeah, but
or passe even.
You're right, but there's. Yeah. But if you're thinking of it in the context of the time when that car came out, it had an electronically controlled suspension.
Right.
It had a 6-speed manual transmission. It had all of these things. It was actually water-cooled heads at a time where they didn't water-cool anything. Mm-hmm. So, it's a really cool comparison just because these are two cars that are really at the top of the game in terms of just technology and being able to really thrash them on a track.
Actually, I misspoke. Three of the members of our podcast today weren't even born when the 959 was out. Lauren, pardon?
I was just born.
Just born.
I was born in
You actually have something special that you're doing with Porsche, which gets away from any one particular car, but has more to do with the whole experience of owning a Porsche. Tell us about that upcoming segment.
the Porsche drive experience in Atlanta. I went down to Atlanta to it's called the Porsche Experience Center, the PEC. And it's pretty much a purpose-built track they have a fleet of about 80 vehicles. I drove a 911 Carrera S. There's Boxsters. There's, Panameras. They have a whole fleet, essentially, that you can take out on this. It's just about a 2-mile wide track, and they have modules within this track that you can, drive Porsches, push them to the limit. Whether you own a Porsche, you can't bring your own car out, but you can pretty much burn all the rubber on their tires and use their brakes. For about $300, prices start for a 90-minute drive on these modules in Atlanta. And I could talk this whole podcast about it. It was an awesome experience. The drive instructors that I rode with, it's really just a chance, essentially, to get into a Porsche and push it to the limit, doing stuff you would never do on the open roads. This isn't really a track built for speed, so if you're looking for something like that, you'd probably go to Barber Motorsports. Porsche has a drive school over there in Birmingham, but this is more of a handling circuit. So there's a kick plate, which is essentially an epoxy surface that you drive over and kind of just slide your car out of control and try to correct it. There's, like I said, different handling circuits. There's 7 different modules all over this entire course, and I felt like I was at Disney World the whole time I was there. It was so fun.
Other manufacturers, of course, BMW most notable, have had tracks where you can try out either your own car or a car like your own car for a long time. Do you think, though, this particular experience is aimed at Porsche owners so they can find out what their car is capable of? Are they using it as a sales tool to get you into a Porsche in the first place? What do you think is what's behind this besides just having an experience like some other brands have had?
Yeah. So I talked to a couple other people who were there driving that day, and some of them said that they were kind of comparing and contrasting. They were thinking about maybe getting a Boxster, but also wanted, to try out the 911 Carrera S. And so they wanted to compare and contrast the two vehicles. They were on the fence about which ones to get. Other people I talked to, they love Porsche. They're all about Porsches, but they're never going to be able to afford one. And so this is a way to get in a vehicle. I think it really just depends. I was talking, with the PR people that I was working with at Porsche, and they said they get, a whole bunch of people who own their own Porsches but don't want to push it to the limit,
sure,
on the open road, and want to come out and, really drive a Porsche and just use one of their vehicles. And so it's kind of a mixture, I would say, people who goes out there.
Sounds like a great segment, and along with everything else we have coming up for season 36, I think we can easily tell our viewers, just because we've been around for a while doesn't mean that we've lost our penchant for looking for exciting and informative drives. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to two vehicles in these waning days of summer that I think captivated a lot of us, and it's gotten a lot of attention. We've recently had in here at work the new Fiat 124 Spider, which of course is a Fiat built by Mazda on the chassis of the MX-5 Miata. We had a chance to see them side by side. They're not the same vehicle, as far as personality-wise. How would you compare and contrast the two of them?
All right. I feel like we've done this a lot already.
We did in the office a lot.
Yeah. The looks are clearly different, especially exterior. The Fiat 124, obviously looks more Italian.
And it has a little bit of that classic original 124 look about it.
Absolutely. It's got a little more trunk back there. Interiors are exactly the same.
Engine-wise, you've got two different engines. Yeah. The Fiat engine versus the Mazda engine.
I will jump in here.
Contrast and compare.
Yeah, so the Fiat uses that 1.4 liter multi-air turbo, and the Mazda still uses a 2 liter. Sky Active. I'd say they're actually they're similar in power. The Fiat actually has more torque and I believe a little bit more horsepower. But in my opinion, in my experience driving both of them, it's kind of negated because the Fiat's actually about 100 pounds heavier.
Yeah, I didn't think it had any particular. You felt like it was a higher revving engine,
Yep.
and you felt like you might have gotten off to a little bit quicker start, but we didn't really see any difference.
Well, yeah, it's when a car weighs that little, 100 pounds is a lot. So yeah, it's turbocharged. So I felt like it. I don't think did it rev as high as the naturally aspirated one.
I don't know. And we had an automatic 124.
It seemed like it spun up quicker. Yeah, we had an automatic.
So
124.
I've never even driven an automatic Miata, so I don't even know what the manual 124 would be like. So it wasn't exactly apples to apples, but I'm not sure.
I think in terms of driving dynamics suspension-wise, the Mazda's more frantic, and the Fiat's more of like a cruiser. Not to say that it doesn't have that classic roadster feel to it, but if you drive them back to back, you will notice a more maybe laid back suspension. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
I couldn't agree with you more. Having, of course, owned a long time ago a Miata, when I looked at them side by side, I agree with what everyone said. You've got the Fiat, which looks a little tamer, because the current MX-5 actually has that mean look about it that's pretty much across all of Mazda products. I thought the ride was substantially more compliant's the wrong word, smoother, maybe even plusher in the 124, although it's hardly a luxury car. Not to put too fine a point on it, I think older buyers might be pointed to a little more towards the 124, and younger buyers might be pointed towards the MX-5. They felt like different cars for the most part, I thought. Lauren, you were still up here in your office when we had the 124 in, and you saw the MX-5. Any comments? Are they the perfect pair for Florida?
I was going to say, I wish I had this rider down here to drop the top down and ride on right next to the beach. But I only drove the Spider. I didn't get to drive the Mazda. But yeah, it's a perfect cruising vehicle. If I only had it down here at the top down, that'd be great.
So if you had a choice to buy one, which would you buy?
My money's for Miata.
Same.
Go with the original. It always works out better.
If you were buying a car that you and your significant other were going to drive, would you still feel the same?
That's a good question.
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
If we split the time down the middle, I'd probably have a harder time justifying the Miata, honestly, because I know for a fact that my wife likes the Fiat, just likes the idea of a Fiat more. But I would try as hard as I could to try and get the Miata, but I might actually lose.
My wife liked the look of the 124 a lot better, and she liked the ride of it better. So I have a feeling if that came to our choice, that would be the way we'd go. Although I must say I'd insist on getting a manual, not the automatic we had.
Well, I drove the Fiat manual, the Abarth manual, and I can't remember because that actually uses the previous Miata transmission. So they're actually, again, even if you drove a new Miata manual and a new Fiat manual, they're still not apples to apples.
Okay, let's move on to our lightning round. 2 minutes to talk topics. It is the end of summer. In many places, it's still hot like summertime. And unfortunately this year, there's been a record number of heat-related deaths in vehicles among children and infants and even pets.
We'll bring up a downer.
I know. Well, he asked for topics. We like to talk about things that are in the news. What do you think of the efforts by manufacturers to prevent infant, child, pet deaths in overheated vehicles? And I'm primarily talking about things like warnings. We have the new GMC Acadia in here that's got a backseat, check your backseat warning. Is it just more, nannyism? Is this a real problem? What do you think manufacturers should do or not do?
I honestly, when I read this, I didn't know of anything that manufacturers were doing to thwart this. But I think, has this really become more of a problem, or are we just more aware to it because there's more voice to activists who don't like seeing
It's on the
pets
evening
and cars,
news,
right?
You know,
So
or
it's
whatever.
I mean, maybe a better question would be like, what could be done better?
At what point do we have to say? Do we say people are such idiots? We have to think for them. Are we there? Basically,
We're certainly heading that direction.
Oh, I know Robinson. Yeah,
No, I got nothing. I'm trying to stay out of this one.
well, remember when children were getting locked in trunks,
Right.
You know, I mean, that wasn't a whole lot different than what this is.
That was more of an issue of kids climbing in
Yeah.
cars
and closing the trunk on themselves.
and closing themselves in there. It wasn't a matter of mom driving somewhere different that day, forgetting she has the kid in the car, and then going into work, leaving her kid in the car.
But we had
all
an
day long.
uproar, and it ended up with federal regulations, and we all have new cars now have releases in the trunk. Are we going? Is that going to happen again?
I don't know if it's going to happen again. I can't predict the future, although I certainly like to try.
I think you can.
Hold on.
We need a crystal ball
I got
here.
nothing. I got nothing. I think that more so than ever, people are a lot more distracted, a lot more easily distracted, and I mean, maybe it is being too nanny-like or whatever, or too overbearing, but maybe a little reminder when you get out of your car, like, instead of, how like Kias and Hyundais,
Don't forget your
Kia and
don't
Hyundais
forget your
say,
keys.
like-
Don't forget your kids.
They say like, oh, goodbye, like when you turn off the car. Maybe it's like, hey, check your back seat.
Right, but
Hey.
if you've seen that every day for a year, is it
You
really
just
going
learn
to
to
register?
ignore it.
Yeah,
You
you're
just
just going
learn
to.
to
And not only that, how often does somebody really forget that the kid's back there? Sometimes
don't
it's like
know.
on purpose. You're staying back here.
Yeah, the GMC system, the way it was triggered is if you open the back seat, open the rear door, and then got in and started the vehicle, when you turn the vehicle off, the last thing we'll do is flash up this warning. I was surprised to see it. I did take notice of it. And I guess on balance, I think it's a good thing. I'm just sorry that we have to resort to something
At least
like
they
that.
can say they did something.
Yes, go ahead,
I
Lauren.
went on that GMC Acadia press preview, and I mean they did a whole presentation about their rear seat reminder. I mean I think it's a good idea they gave a stat, 40 kids die per year after being left in the car, but this little reminder, I think it's worth it. You can turn it off if you don't want it. You can disable it if needed. I don't have kids. I don't have pets. I wouldn't want it. You can disable it. For the parents who even remotely think that's a possibility, just leave it on. I think if a stupid reminder prevents 40 kids from dying in the backseat of a car, why not,
Yeah, if it
Well
prevents
said.
one kid from
and
dying.
it's unintrusive.
exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
like it's trying to jerk the steering wheel out of your hand or
No.
something.
It's like 3 beeps, and it like flashes on your dashboard. I like it because I've seen some where it's like it's dependent on the weight in the back seat. So if you put like a purse or a suitcase or something in the back seat, then it goes off. So that's kind of annoying. But I like the fact with the Acadia, it's dependent on if you open the rear doors. But it's also saying, say you open your rear doors to get your kids in the back seat, and you were going to drop them off at school. You don't turn off the vehicle, they just get out at the carpool. When you turn your car off, it's going to beep even though your kids have left. But, it just reminds you, turn your neck, look back, they're not there. I think it's a simple tool that, like we said, if it saves one kid, why not? If you don't want it, turn it off on your car.
Well said, and we'll end it there. Okay, we have a viewer question. Andrew asked, after restoring foggy car headlights, how long does it take for them to be foggy again? Well, my question, Andrew, is how long did it take them to get foggy in the first place?
Well, are we talking about like interior fog, or are we talking about the yellowing?
The yellowing
Yeah,
of the
probably,
headlight
yeah.
lenses.
I actually just did a set of headlights, and they come, depending on what kind of kit you get, they'll come with a wax or a sealant to go over it. So it's I'm not going to say it's never going to happen again, but if you want to increase your chances and you're going to do it yourself, make sure you just put that sealant on top of it.
coating on it.
It'll at least give it a little bit of extra protection. But I would say you've got a good amount of time. It's not going to be like
Hey, 3 to 5 years before there's any
Right,
degradation.
but like when it originally comes on and then you take it off, you're essentially scraping
off a
little
layer.
bit of an extra layer than what was originally there. So is it going to happen faster? I think that's what he's trying to ask.
I've heard that it does.
Yeah.
It would come back faster.
I'm sure there was some kind of a sealant on there just
Yeah.
as part of the chemical process to start with. So.
I think it depends on where you live too. I would think if you're in a sandy environment where your front end's constantly getting pelted with sand and stuff like that, I think they would pit sooner.
If you are in a hot coastal environment, they dull quicker from my experience. I've seen people, when you go to the beach, you drive up and down, and you see people, that live there, and it seems like a 2- and 3-year-old car's got, foggy headlights. So Andrew, I think our answer is probably within a few years. But if the kit has a sealant in it, make sure you use it. And there's probably some other sealants out there that after the fact that maybe the best thing is to just keep them up, not just to walk away from them and say zero maintenance.
Probably.
Okay. Rant and rave time, anyone? Anyone got something that they really want to get off their chest that is bothering them about other drivers, about the cars, about the world we live in? What?
We'll just get people's thoughts on Pokemon Go as it relates to
and he looks immediately to me.
Well, you're the one who is playing it.
Yeah. Are you playing it?
I'm not playing it right now.
I saw Patrick in the parking lot playing Pokemon Go as he was walking into work.
As I was walking into work, I wasn't driving.
That's the number one thing. Don't play while driving.
See, but what he doesn't tell you was he was blindly walking across the street.
Exactly.
Looking down at his
both ways.
What'd you say?
I look.
Lauren?
That's what I was going to say. He wasn't driving, but he's not paying attention in the crosswalk.
Wow. Patrick.
I was just kidding. I didn't know it was a real thing. Now I'm disappointed in you, Patrick.
No. I look both ways.
Patrick.
I look both ways when I cross the street. I don't know. It's going to be a thing like. Do you really want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it.
It's going to be a thing like texting. It's whatever. People are going to do it when they're
people
driving.
can handle it.
Well, how long?
They're going to be stupid about it.
How long do you think this will last?
I know. I don't think the game is going to be popular for much longer. I think people will play it, but then it'll just be like anything else. It'll be like finding music on your phone or responding to a message on your phone.
Is there any kind of disclaimer that says don't do it while you're driving?
Yeah,
does it know when? Because it's got to.
As soon as you open up the app, it says "Do not trespass" or "Do not drive" and play.
You would think maybe after a certain speed you wouldn't be able to even access it.
I don't know.
To taking this one step further, my rant and rave has to do with people totally ignoring the don't use your cell phone while driving laws. When they passed all these laws, I knew that it was for naught because police departments just don't have the time to go out there and police this stuff. And everybody and their brother's using them, and they've got tinted windshields, so you can't half the time see somebody in the car. Do you think cell phones should be somehow deactivated or limited in use while you're driving? That's been proposed, but nobody much talks about it anymore, and I think it's because of security concerns. But what do you think? Should there somehow be a restriction on your cell phone when you're driving?
Logistically, though, what about everybody who's not driving in the car?
Yeah.
So, I
think that's why you don't hear about it.
Right.
Yeah,
you need them to do it so you don't have to. And
Yeah.
you can't totally shut them down.
It is, our voice activation systems through your car, is that the answer? I still find myself, when I'm using those, paying attention to what I'm saying and not driving.
Maybe autonomous driving isn't such a bad thing after all. If people are going to be this distracted behind the wheel,
Patrick.
maybe we need the computers to take over.
Lord, what a world we live in. And with that, let's wrap up this first MotorWeek podcast of our 36th season. I want to thank everybody, including Brian Robinson, our writer-producer, our online content coordinator, Patrick Lucas, assistant
Pokemon
producer, Craig
It's a
Carlos,
great game.
FYI reporter Lauren Morrison down in Florida, audio engineer Jim Bigwood, podcast creator Bob Mixter, and, of course, Patrick again for being the podcast producer.
Once again, Patrick Lucas.
Thank you all for joining us, and be sure to watch MotorWeek on your public television station just about everywhere. And if you miss us there, switch over to Velocity on Tuesday nights at 7:30 Eastern and catch us there. I'm John Davis. For all of us at MotorWeek, thanks very much for being a part of the MotorWeek experience.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.